Yo, how we doing, everybody? We are finally here with our X Factor NFL talk. For the first few episodes, we're actually going to dive into fantasy football, which is what me and Daniel are super passionate about. And so, because it's never too early to talk about fantasy football, Daniel, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. Back in fantasy football land, trying to make some of the viewers some money, maybe. You never know. There's big buy-in talks. So I'm excited. So I have a question for you. When was the first time you played fantasy football?
First time I played. Oh man, it was. I probably have to go back to like whenever I was younger, like 8, 9 years old, and I remember this draft. We all did this online draft through the ESPN fantasy football app, and the website like crashed. Something went on with the draft, and my dad, being the passionate commissioner that he was, went in on the offline mode and made sure that we all got the players we selected. And it took him hours and hours, and now his passion of being a great commissioner has rubbed off and onto me in my fantasy I will play fantasy football till the day I die. It is incredible. It's one of my favorite things ever. What about you, man?
What a guy right there. That's dedication. I remember 16 league.
Six?
Like freshman year of high school. I remember, and it was not well ran at all. We did not have a choice dad to run it.
We didn't have Pastor Steve.
No, so I remember I actually made a trade in it. I needed a quarterback late in the year. This was probably like 2015. I traded my Anthony Davis in an NBA fantasy basketball league for Tom Brady in the fantasy football league.
Oh God.
Illegal, but no one was mad. Yes, but it worked. I won the league that year. No one credits that I won the league. So it was
I don't blame them.
But I thought that was a genius move at the time. I remember that year I joined these Facebook groups. I am still in NFL fantasy football discussion, NFL fantasy football. Still under the state, I have 10,000 members. But I remember that was I was so into it, and the rest of the week was just so not into it.
Yeah.
Thank goodness they've kind of gotten up there with me now. We're all into it, but my Lord, that was so much fun.
Now we got a league, man. It's called Snake Fam. If you want to hit us up on Instagram, we actually have a Instagram where all of our fantasy stuff goes, kind of with the league information and such. It's a very competitive keeper league. It's extremely fun, and it's extremely fun to keep up with because there are some blockbuster trades. Our managers are always looking to improve, even whenever we're trying to reset. But that's for neither here nor there. Let's just get right into it. We wanted, first episode, whenever me and Daniel were talking, we wanted to get out our way too early rankings. And for this episode alone, we are going to focus on the quarterbacks and running backs. And so for the quarterbacks, we're doing top 20. For running backs, we're doing top 30. And we haven't had any sort of discussion about these rankings. So this is going to be all raw, our emotions. We're kind of going to discuss why we think certain players may boom, why some players may bust. And then just really exciting. We're going to compare also some of these guys where they played or where they finished last season. So I'm extremely excited. Daniel, you want to go ahead and give us your number one quarterback headed into the 2021
quarterback season? First. All right. Now, before we start quarterback, especially, I'd like to say I don't think you should do anything with a quarterback but stream him. You should not draft a quarterback until round 7 at the earliest, okay? That's me. Troy's going to think completely differently on this, and he always has. But now I trust Troy's way of thinking. But I'm going to go with absolutely what everyone in this entire world should pick. And I'm going to pick Patrick Mahomes as the number one quarterback. On Fantasy Pros, they have 19 experts as their consensus ranking, and every single one of them have Patrick Mahomes picked as number one. And I don't know why you wouldn't, but go ahead, Troy. I know you might have something different here, which would be crazy.
I do have something different. I'm actually going to stay in the division, and I'm going to go with my sophomore year boomer, and I'm going with the guy. Last season, Daniel can attest to this. I was high on Kyler Murray coming into the year. I was pro Kyler. I thought Kyler was going to be in the MVP conversation. Obviously, that didn't happen, but he did take that leap and finish number 2 last year. I mean, I think Justin Herbert, who finished 10th this season, is going to take that big leap and go to the number 1 fantasy quarterback in the NFL and fantasy. Because, I mean, last season, you look at his stats, 4,336 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and he's not a slouch when it comes to running either. But yes, Justin Herbert, his weapons, he's not losing any weapons outside of Hunter Henry, who they could re-sign, but I doubt that they do. But he's still got Eckler. He's still got they're losing Kalen Ballage. I forgot about him. But outside of that, I think they bring in another weapon because, Mike Williams isn't that number 2. He's probably a good number 3 option. But Justin Herbert, LA, you got a lot to be excited about. And he is my number 1 quarterback headed into next season.
I think you're absolutely crazy. Let me these 19 consensus rankings. I know it's everybody has a say, right? These 19 so-called best experts on Fantasy Pros, right? Okay. Justin Herbert, the best ranking of those 19 people is 5.
Okay.
The worst, 35. That's not a starting quarterback. Average at 9. I will say I have him as number 10. And me personally, I have too much pride to put him above Joe Burrow.
I can't do it. I love Burrow.
You put him at 1.
I did put him at 1. I think that sophomore leap, and he's got another year of chemistry with Eckler, who is a receiving back and was not used to his full potential last season in terms of out of the backfield usage in the receiving game. He's got another Keenan Allen. He's starting to develop that chemistry with Keenan. Mike Williams. Again, they could bring in another big body tight end. They could bring in another big body wide receiver. They're going to shore up that offensive line. And I'm really excited for Herbert. I think this kid's going to have an unbelievable year. He's my guy that I think to ride high going into next year.
I think
he's my Kyler. You think I'm crazy? Hey, that's why I'm here, man.
I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a great young talent. I completely agree.
I can't believe you have him at 10. You understand that would be no improvement. And Herbert is one of the – and Herbert didn't even start for the first, 3 games last year. So, I mean –
I have a sophomore quarterback above him that isn't Joe Burrow.
Okay, I can't wait to find out who that is.
And I love this kid. So that'll be interesting. I bet you might not have him in your rankings.
But number 2, who you got? Number 2.
I have Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills. I love the play style. He was number 1 quarterback last year, averaged 25.32. Only quarterback to break the 400-point margin. I believe only player to break 400 fantasy points last season and standard points. Big arm. Great.
His arm is unbelievable.
Amazing.
And again, just kind of harping on Josh Allen, he ran for almost 500 yards. And this guy is unbelievable. 8 rushing touchdowns on almost 500 yards. And they don't have a solid running back. So unless, they draft one, unless they sign one, he's going to be their primary runner.
Zach Moss. We'll preview.
Yes. I mean, Zach Moss is primed to take a leap. But I mean, a leap for him isn't very far. He could literally run for 600 yards, and that's a leap. But Josh Allen, unbelievable. And number 2, I actually have Kyler. I think that Kyler kind of gets back to normal. In the first 7 games of this season, I do believe, before his bye, he had 7 rushing touchdowns. He was on an unbelievable pace. He only had 1 game before his bye where he didn't have a rushing touchdown. After the bye, he started dealing with some injuries and really started kind of coming back down to earth. And he only had those 4 rushing touchdowns. And that was with 9 games. So 2 more games, and he did 3 less rushing touchdowns. I think that Kyler's going to be healthy all year. I think that the Cardinals are going to add another weapon. And I think that the Cardinals are one of those teams you have to look out for in the NFC. I think that they could be a very interesting playoff team. And I think Kyler, after last season where, half the season he was pretty much an MVP candidate, I think he's ready for a 16-game, 17-game slate of just great football, and he's my number 2, man.
I love Cliff Kingsbury.
I love Cliff as well. A great offensive coach, especially with D-Hop. Obviously, another guy, Kenyon Drake, they could lose in the open market. But honestly, you don't need to pay a quarterback or a running back. I saw a little chart that showed the last 10 running backs in a Super Bowl and how much they made. It's really mind-blowing that there's only 3 over $1 million. And, just kind of shows. And just kind of shows, you don't necessarily need a running back to take the next step. But I think Kyler does enough with his legs next season to just be the number 2 right behind Justin Herbert.
I have Kyler number 3, and I completely agree. I think Cliff Kingsbury offense, awesome. I love his legs. I want to see
Kyler.
efficiency out of running the ball. A rushing touchdown is worth 6 points, and that's a lot of points. Right? So, I mean, I love Kyler as well at 3. Who do you have at 3?
I have Josh Allen. So we pretty much just flipped. Yeah, we flipped there. Another quick note on Kyler: 819 yards rushing. Like that's incredible, and that's on top of his 3,900 passing yards. But yeah, Josh Allen. We already kind of talked about him. I have Josh at 3. So who you got at 4, man?
I don't know how you'll feel about this one, but I have Lamar Jackson. Another guy, I love the legs out of him. I love to see running the ball, and especially the late in that year and in the playoffs. I think he ran the ball amazing in that offense. I like him a lot.
I wasn't high on Lamar. Outside of the draft process and everything, I wasn't that high on him. As I watched him, like for the last few years, I'm like starting to really like Lamar. Outside, he needs to polish up his deep ball accuracy and a few things, but getting a big wide receiver will help that. He's been working the last 2 seasons with his best wide receiver being Willie Snead. So
there's terrible.
Yeah, so they need to get him a good wide receiver, but I don't have him at 4. I have Desean Watson, who's a guy that we don't know where he's technically going to be playing, and he could run into a situation where he's not playing for half the year because the Texans seem very keen on keeping him, and he seems very, I want out. And so whenever there's 2 things pulling against each other, he could be like, well, I'm going to sit out. I've made enough money. I've made enough of this and that. But if he plays, Desean Watson's unbelievable. I have
Desean a little bit lower, but I think the reason I have him lower is because of the situation.
Yeah.
I really struggle to put a guy where I don't know who he's going to be playing with. I mean, you're telling me Desean Watson does end up on the Jets. Is he top 4?
The Jets have a lot of money, though, so they could get a good wide receiver. They could get some guys. But, dude, Desean with less, though, can probably do more with less than a lot of other guys. I think Desean is a guy that could take that leap and put his name, because I think he's a top 4 quarterback in the league in general. But yeah, the Jets would make me reconsider maybe an after the draft thing. If he gets traded to the Jets, maybe I'll have a different ranking whenever we release those. But
yeah,
as of right now, he's my number 4.
Who do you go at? Texans number 4.
I think I'm hoping that he goes to the 49ers. Is my initial thoughts.
I got you.
Or Colts or something.
And that was your number 5?
At my number 5, I got Lamar.
Okay. I have A-Rod.
You have A-Rod? Yeah, I put Lamar here. I think Lamar has to be in your top 5. If you don't have Lamar in your top 5, I don't know what you're doing.
He's a running back in the quarterback position.
He extremely is. And he's unbelievable. So, I mean, he's just one of those guys that
he finished number 10 last year, though. But I feel like you have to understand the later in the year factor.
Yeah, he didn't play a lot with a lot of COVID issues. He got pulled out of one game for a stretch and then came back. So he had a lot of little issues. But who do you have at 5? Have you named your number 5 yet?
I have Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. Probably the best quarterback to ever play the game. I love
in terms of talent?
No, not in talent, but in terms of, I don't know. I want to say passing stats, but I don't have his passing stats up either. So you can't
statistical dominance year in, year out.
But then I don't want to say statistical dominance because then I want to put Tom Brady because he has how many Super Bowls?
Well, if we're not talking Super Bowls, I mean,
I think most people agree with that.
Yeah. And who you got at 6?
I have Desean.
Desean, that's where you put Desean.
I had him lower because of
the situation ongoing with the Texans. At number 6, I have Dak Prescott.
I don't like Dak. I don't. It scares me.
It does scare me. Don't get me wrong. But when Dak was healthy, he was healthy for 4 games. He was injured in the 5th. When Dak was healthy, he was on an unbelievable pace. And one thing the Cowboys aren't lacking is playmakers when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. And we can start talking about their O-line getting older and maybe Zeke taking a step back. But, we may have different opinions on that. I don't think he's taking a step back. I don't know about you.
I think Zeke gets back.
Yeah. So, I mean, he had 9 touchdowns in 4 games. He had almost 2,000 yards in 4 games, which is unbelievable. Like, you really sit down and think this dude almost had 2,000 yards in 4 games.
Yeah.
Like, that's unbelievable. So I really like Dak. Their weapons there are great. And I think that he's going to be ready to itch himself into some money and he is a free agent. Okay. So things can go on, but I think Dallas is going to tag him again. And I think he signs that tag. I think he'd be an idiot not to. But if he starts playing well, if he starts playing well, the only thing that could scare me is he holds out after about 4 or 5 games if he's rolling. And it's just like, okay, now I want my money before I go back out there since he dealt with this injury. That could be a problem. But yeah, who you got at 6? Did you say?
On Dak, through even counting that 5th game where he got injured, was averaging 27.73 fantasy points a game.
Yeah.
If you just take pure average, that's the highest average of any quarterback. So, I mean, you have to recognize, I have him a little bit farther down, but wait, what number? 7?
I had him at 6.
Okay, at 6, I have Desean. And then going into 7, I'm going back to a running quarterback in Russell Wilson, who will play for the Seattle Seahawks and will not hold out because
it's Russell Wilson. He's not going to do that.
I don't think. I've said it 3-4 times. I love a quarterback who's going to run me for touchdown.
Yeah.
I need that. Like, the difference in running and throwing the ball is insane. Like, the most important position in a standard fantasy football league is the running back. And when you have a quarterback who is putting up potentially running back rushing yards, that's the most valuable thing in fantasy football. And that's why we both have Kyler, Lamar up there in the top 3 or 4. Especially because when you look at Lamar, his throwing, you couldn't even put his throwing in the top 20.
Yeah.
And you have to look at his legs. And I mean, that's where I'm valuing Russ, where he has turned into more of a pocket passer. I love his weapons with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and his ability to run the ball. Before week 7 last year, similar to what you said about Kyler, he was an MVP candidate, probably an MVP. And he was still able to finish top 6 last year, averaging 23 points a game. And if you looked at his numbers after week 7, they're half of what they were before.
Yeah. And it is his kind of downfall started coming into his decision making. And just real quick on your running quarterback, he only ran for 2 touchdowns, which is kind of like you're like, whoa, but he had over 500 yards. Yeah. And not to mention, he had one of the lowest attempts of probably our top 20. I would assume that we both kind of relatively have the same amount of quarterbacks. He ran 82 times, so it's not even like he was overly running. So yeah, that's just something there. My number 7 is Aaron Rodgers. This is where I put Rodgers. I just think, I mean, A-Rod's A-Rod. And if the Packers get him another weapon, I think he could have another MVP year because it's just Aaron Rodgers. You think he's going to go away and he just keeps poking his head in. And so yeah, that's where I have A-Rod. Who you got at 8, man?
This is the one that's going to shake you up, I believe. This is where my sophomore, I think we saw a lot out of this kid at the very end of the year. And then I love him. It's Jalen Hurts. And I know you're not a big fan. I'm really sure you weren't last year. You might be now. But I think if it's his offense, which it clearly is.
It's going to be, yeah.
If it's his offense, I mean, if you look at his numbers, I don't know if you have them pulled up, but they were good.
He threw for 1,061 yards. Obviously, he only played 4 games. He was benched in the 5th. 6 touchdowns. He did have those 4 interceptions. And then whenever I look at his rushing stats, 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. Again, that's in 4 games work. So he had almost 10 touchdowns overall. And again, he was benched in that 5th game.
I will say he appeared in all 15 games last year. He took the field in all 15 games.
That's cool. That's a cool little nugget. I didn't know that.
Yeah. If you look, like he took the field. There's a wide receiver, a wildcat option. They wanted him on the field. They knew his talent. They knew he had it. And then I think he really showed it in those last, especially 2 or 3 of those games. He went crazy. I mean, his fantasy stats were insane. Like, he won people money for sure. Like, he was a league winner.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
I thought he was going to be my league winner. He wasn't. But I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, and so you had him at 8.
I have him at 8, which I know it's high. I agree.
This is where, and this is probably going to surprise you. So both of our number 8s kind of surprised. This is where I put Patty. Is at 8.
Whoa! I didn't realize you hadn't said Patrick Mahomes yet. What?
Yeah, I think he's gonna slide. He was number 3 last year. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And while his touchdown numbers, I think, will go up, I think his yards and his rushing usage will go down. I don't think he runs the ball that much. He had over 300 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. So I think that goes down. I don't think they use him near as much in the run game just to kind of preserve him. And I think that Patrick, while he could 100% go on a revenge season just because he's so mad about the way they played in the Super Bowl, that he could absolutely throw for 60 touchdowns and, over 5,000 yards. I don't see that. I see him hovering closer to 4,000 yards with probably a lot more touchdowns, because I don't think this touchdown total of 38 is where he's going to sit. I think that could look more like 45 next year. But as of right now, I wanted to slide him into 8 just because I don't think he's going to go crazy next year. I think he's just going to be Patty for a year and just kind of, do what he has to do to get to the game again, because that's all that he's going to be focused on is getting back to the bowl. But then again, like I said, he could go on a revenge tear and make me look dumb as can be. But Patrick Mahomes, I have him at 8. So who's your 9, bro?
I have a question about Patty. How long is his whole recovery process? Do we know that yet?
I think it's right before training camp and all of that. I think he'll be.
He's not going to miss anything other than
I don't think he'll miss anything outside of off-season work.
And he would be not that much doing anyway.
Yeah. If you look at it, I mean, there's obviously you can still, and I mean, Tom Brady's kind of going through the same thing, just some structural cleanup. Yeah. And I mean, so the offseason is a time to do that. So, I mean, he's doing an offseason thing, and, it'd probably be one of many that he gets done just to kind of maintain. But yeah, I don't think it's that long. I think it's leading right up into training camp, into those.
That's crazy. You have Patrick Mahomes that low. That's insane. I think if you're talking most talented quarterback of all time, I have him.
And now we have too early to give him that title.
Size, I agree.
Do what?
We have a small sample size, yes, but from what we have seen, kiddo's good.
I love Patrick, man. I do. But in terms of fantasy value next year, I have him a little low. I think we need to tamper our Patty's going to be the greatest quarterback ever next year. I think we need to tamper that expectation a little bit.
Question. Do you still think he will have the highest ADP of all quarterbacks?
Yes.
I agree.
I don't think it's close. I think he'll go in first rounds.
I have him number 1, and it's not even close, and I will tell you, please never draft him or you're not going to win your league. Yeah. Maybe not, but probably.
Yeah. So who got at 9?
9, that's where I put in Dak Prescott. I mean, he's healthy. When he was healthy last year, he was awesome. I agree. I think he played amazing games. And then I think the offensive line is getting worse. I think Zeke is getting better, but I don't want to say Zeke is going to play better, but I think Zeke will perform in fantasy relevance more next year than last year because he 100%. Has it. But I do worry about the offensive line. I worry about the weapons outside of Amari Cooper. And I don't love Amari Cooper either. I love
CeeDee Lamb, personally.
I love CeeDee Lamb as well, but I don't love Amari Cooper. I worry about his health. I worry about his money situation. I feel like he's the type of guy, opposite of Russell Wilson, he would sit out. And I don't blame him at all for it. But
who are we talking, Dak?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. He should. If I'm him and I play really well for the first few games, I would be like, yo, until I get this contract extension hammered out, I'm not playing.
I think Jerry does it immediately. I think Jerry's the type of guy to be like, yeah, I can wait.
Yeah. And this is where I put Russell Wilson, right at 9. We've talked about him. So who you got at 10, bro?
That's where I have Justin Herbert.
Okay.
That is where I think Justin Herbert. I don't think he
So again, for everybody listening, he doesn't have Justin Herbert improving a single position from his fantasy ending last season. I think that is insane. I think that's insane.
Man, I can't put a single person ahead of him on my list. The only guy that you're probably even going to argue that is better than him would be, I mean, you put him at 1, which I think is absolutely insane, but
I'm talking fantasy value.
Dude, I mean,
he is a gunslinger.
He was number 9 last year, he played 15 games, averages 22.86 points. I don't see him better. I mean,
you'll see him getting better. How about film studies, working with the wide receivers an extra year?
I agree. He gets better.
Keenan Allen looked like a top 10 wide receiver.
Keenan Allen's a stud. I love Keenan Allen. I always have.
You know how I felt about Keenan. We'll
Yeah,
get into that in next week's episode.
Yeah, I love Keenan Allen. I don't think he'll be that high this year, but I mean, I love Keenan Allen for sure.
So you have a sophomore quarterback at 10. I also have a sophomore quarterback at 10. That's where I went Joe Burrow. I put Joe Burrow at 10. I love Joe Burrow. Me and Daniel, obviously, big Bengal fans. Joey B, I mean, in 9 full games, he was injured on his 10th. He had 2,688 yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And those numbers don't tell the whole story. What he was doing with the team was very, very fun. They were more exciting to watch with Burrow. He ran for 142 yards on 37 attempts. He already had 3 rushing touchdowns. He was having a heck of a rookie campaign. And then obviously the knee injury. Hopefully he can recover. And I think that the Bengals are doing a good job of getting some weapons in the building for him, upgrading a little bit on the wide receiver because they're losing A.J. Green. He's not coming back, as sad as it is. But he's not going to come back. So I'm going to be really intrigued to see who they go. But I think that they upgrade his weapons, and I think Joe Burrow has a really good bounce back year. Who do you got at 11?
I have Joe Burrow at 11.
Joe Burrow at 11.
The offensive line has to improve, though. I think he doesn't have the time in the pocket that he needs. And I think the weapons are good enough around him. I really do. I think T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, whoever you put around there, I think those guys are good enough. I think one guy away maybe. And I mean, I hope they don't go like Jamar Chase at 5. I really hope they don't. But if they do, then again, it's another weapon. Hopefully, they spend money on the offensive line.
Yeah, then you don't spend money on a wide receiver in free agency.
It would be a lot easier. It'd be a lot easier. As Bengals fans, we have the bias, of course, but I think he has a lot of talent, and no one would argue that. I think he has to be healthy, though, week 1, though, which is scary, of course, because a lot of people would assume, like, no, he's probably not going to be healthy for week 1.
I've heard some rumors that he's potentially already running.
That'd be awesome.
So that is something to keep an eye on. At 11, I have Tom Brady. This is where I put the GOAT. I mean, his numbers last year as a 43-year-old, 4,633 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. While he may not improve in the yards department, and while they could lose Chris Godwin, like people need to, kind of claim that to be real. Chris Godwin could make some money. Now he's got his ring. He may not be all that focused on, he got his, and now he can focus on getting his bag, and he could get a bag somewhere. But
Chris,
yeah, so
put up crazy stats in the Buccaneers offense.
Do what?
Chris Godwin does not put up crazy stats in the Buccaneer offense.
No, he could go for another big opportunity because, with the Buccaneers, the way they are, they could get veterans cheap. They could get like a Marvin Jones who just wants a ring and still a very good wide receiver. They could bring Antonio Brown back on a really cheap deal. They could bring in some sort, and the Buccaneers are very, very fluid in these situations. So I have Tom Brady at 11.
I struggle putting Tom Brady higher than I have him pretty low. I'm not going to tell you what I have him yet because that's out of the picture at the moment. But I struggle putting him there. He's going to be 44 years old. Yes, he has won the Super Bowl. But I feel like we didn't watch the same Tom Brady in the playoffs as we did during the season.
Me and on our other on the podcast side of the X Factor, we had a conversation during the regular season where we were like, we're watching Tom right now. Like once the playoff starts, we'll watch Brady. It's like his alter ego almost, where Tom kind of he's more gunslinging in the regular season, takes more risk. Whereas in the postseason, even though he took some risk and turned the ball over some, they're more calculated. But yeah, I think Tom Brady there. Who you got at 12, bro?
I will say about Tom Brady before, I also like him better in Bruce Arians' offense.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing against Bill Belichick, but I think Bruce Arians, he's a quarterback mastermind. But at 12, I have Ryan Tannehill. I think he is one of the most slept-on quarterbacks in the entire NFL. I love Ryan Tannehill. I love that offense. I don't love Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry's a stud, and no one can argue that. And people assume the ball is going to Derrick Henry. I love A.J. Brown. I love that offense, deep ball. I like Ryan Tannehill. I know you don't like him quite as much, though.
Something for the Titans, for Tannehill, that needs to kind of be addressed to a sense is that Corey Davis had a breakout year.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that he's a free agent and an unrestricted one at that. So they're going to have to compete with the other teams in the league for Corey Davis because Corey Davis is he's 26.
He's
proven he can be a very solid wide receiver. And so that is intriguing. I have him just a little bit lower.
He finished quarterback 7 last year on the year.
I know, it's crazy. And he had 7 rushing touchdowns. 7 rushing touchdowns. That read option in the goal line is just so tough because everybody closes in on Derek, and then Tannehill has the mobility to run out and get a score.
Yeah.
And so I like him there. At 12, though, I have Jalen Hurts. That's where I slide Hurts.
That's a lot higher than I expected you to have him.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I like Hurts, and I think for a whole season of work, I think he'll have a pretty good year. And potentially, a lot of people, man, are high on Jalen Hurts going into next year.
Yeah.
Like, I have seen some fantasy experts be like, buy in on Hurts. Like, he's a top 5 guy. I don't see that. I think he's a little bit outside the top 10. But I think, not getting too ahead of ourselves, but the next year, I think he could be primed and ready for a takeoff. But for next season, I think he has more of a rookie campaign because, he didn't have a full season. And I think he still tries to figure it out. Eagles have a lot of question marks in terms of their running game, where Miles Sanders had a few great games and had a few bad games, and their weapons are subpar. I love Jalen Reagor, go TCU, but he cannot be a wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of question marks there, but his legs enough. His legs are enough to get him even close to the top 10, if not greater, like you have him. So yeah, that's where I put Hurts. Who you got at 13?
At 13, I have the recently traded, and they gave him a lot for him, Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I think he has a lot of talent. I know, like, people say the injury prone, like, those are fake injuries. Like,
he still won't play.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you're telling me those injuries that he had, like the one in, like, 2017, if he was in, like, playoff contention, he wouldn't have played through it.
Yeah, and a big thing people forget, he didn't have his best wide receiver the whole year last year. Kenny Golladay was about as fragile can get, and he still threw for over 4,000 yards. And
he finished as quarterback number 15 last season on the Detroit Lions, and you're telling me that he doesn't improve with a quarterback like Sean McVay.
And with Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Cam Akers, Tyler Higbee, Gerald. Yeah. Then you start just naming off some names. You're like, holy cow. 13 is where I have Tannehill. That's where I put Ryan Tannehill. And so we're going like flip. Like I'm like 1 below. But who you got at 14?
I got Baker Mayfield. I really like Baker Mayfield. I hate to say that because as a Bengals fan, I just hate the Browns, right? But I enjoy watching him play. I think that offense is explosive. Is Kareem Hunt still there next year?
I do believe so.
Okay, so
because he signed that extension in the middle of the year.
Probably a top 5 running back when it comes to catching the ball, and that's all he really does. He catches the ball amazingly. Odell Beckham Jr. is expected to be back as long as he is not traded. That's an awesome weapon. They didn't have a phenomenal Jarvis Landry. I mean, they played games this season with just tight ends because the entire wide receiver room had COVID, right? Like, I mean, he finished as quarterback number 17 last year, averaged right at 16 points a game. I like that offense. I think it's only getting better.
Yeah.
I like Baker.
Yeah. At 14, I put Matthew Stafford. So, again, I went one right below you. He is the only quarterback on my list that didn't have a rushing touchdown last year. And so I find that very intriguing that he's a pocket guy. But yeah, kind of hitting on Baker, him and Odell have to develop some sort of chemistry. Because they have none whenever they play together. He tries forcing it to him, and that's what makes Baker look subpar, is whenever he tries forcing it to a wide receiver. When Baker is just playing loose and playing free, he's a different quarterback, and he's actually a pretty good one. And as a TCU and Bengal fan, who, he's beat down the TCU defense many of times. I've had to watch this man.
Amen.
And so, it's hard saying nice things about Baker, but I do like him. But yeah, that's where I have Stafford. Who you got at 15?
I will also say before we get into 15, after about quarterback number 8, these are streaming options.
100%. 100%.
Like aren't guys to go draft in the top 10 rounds.
And guys that if you have like some playoff matchups in mind midseason and you're going to make the playoffs, like your team is performing, and you try to like ice it up, and you don't have a great quarterback, but you don't have a bad one, and you just kind of want to get better playoff matchups for sure.
Like that stuff we'll tell you about later, but like for sure, like guys week 13, 14, 15 are the guys, oh man, they play the Jacksonville.
Buy in on those guys, yeah, for sure.
For sure. But then at 15, I have a guy, I don't know how many rush touchdowns he has. I know you have it written down, but Daniel Jones. I like him a lot. Danny Dimes.
I love Danny Dimes.
15 games last year. He can run the ball more than you can think.
He's like arguably one of the fastest quarterbacks in the game.
He is sneaky, super athletic, and I love watching him play.
5 games over 40 rushing yards.
He gets
almost. Do what?
He gets Saquon Barkley back.
He gets Barkley back. He had a weird year. They had and New York had a weird year. But I love Danny Dimes. While his decision making can be very subpar and very suspect, Danny Dimes is a good thing. And I'm actually going to go rookie at 15. This is where I had Trevor Lawrence. That's where I slid in Trevor Lawrence, is 15. His college numbers speak for themselves. I think he goes to Jacksonville. And people act like Jacksonville doesn't have weapons. Whenever I look at him, I see a couple weapons there. I see DJ Shark. I see Laviska Shenault. I see James Robinson. And I think that they can sign some guys. And their defense isn't full of bombs. You know, for a team picking one, they do have some fundamental building blocks. And I think with one good draft with a guy like Urban Meyer who knows the college game, I think they could be set to take a decent leap. Maybe not, anything special, but a decent leap. And I think Trevor Lawrence wins Rookie of the Year and has a good year there.
I think that if we do these rankings in 2 months from now, we will both have Trevor Lawrence a lot higher. Because there's always a rookie quarterback who looks awesome. There always is. And we know that. And I think you could definitely see Trevor Lawrence in the Jacksonville offense. And I have him a lot lower right now. And it's because, I don't know where he's going to end up. At the end of the day, he's still a college football player. So I don't have him there. But I think he's a great quarterback. He's just generational quarterback. I think there's going to be multiple quarterbacks in this top 20 ranking by the end of the year.
Yeah. Who you got at 16, bro?
16, I have my absolute guy, the tight end, Taysom Hill. Dude, I'm telling you, like I said, man, these rankings are all about each person has their own rankings, But if he plays quarterback in that offense, he looked great. When he was just under center,
Great is a bit of an overstatement.
How many rushing touchdowns did he have?
8.
That's a lot.
87 attempts, 457 yards, and 8 touchdowns.
That's 48 fantasy points just about rushing touchdowns. And I will say, not all as his actual quarterback.
You think he's the starting quarterback going into week 1?
Yes. It's in his contract, bro. I'm telling you. Bro, why would they have him over Jameis this year if they didn't think this guy could be the guy?
Okay. I'm not high on him. I don't see his throwing ability. He is a goal line quarterback. I'll give you that. He's a goal line guy. But
if he is the starter week 1, he will probably be my starting quarterback week 1. I don't know who they play yet, but if they play anyone other than like the Bucs and like the top 10 defense, he'll be my starting quarterback week 1.
16, I went Matt Ryan.
I like Matt. I have him at 17, so we can.
Yeah, the weapons Matt Ryan has is unbelievable. Obviously, Julio is kind of falling off. Calvin Ridley, I think they add a wide receiver. And Matt Ryan's just a guy that gobbles up yards. They're always playing from behind. So, he's going to gobble up yards.
Matt Ryan's my guy. It's like the past 3-4 years.
I had him for
wanted to draft Matt Ryan.
Ryan.
It's like, oh, wow, 4 rounds up. I need a quarterback. Matt Ryan's still there, man.
Yeah.
He finished as QB 12 last year. And if before I looked at ranking anybody, I was like, dude, Matt Ryan sucked last year. Dude, quarterback 12, he was a streaming option a lot of times.
Yeah.
Weapons, Julio, please, Lord, you're amazing. Be healthy.
Yeah.
Cowboys is awesome, especially when he is a wide receiver 2.
Oh, yeah.
I like that offense a lot. I always have, but they struggled a lot last year, so we'll see. Still,
so you said you had him at 17, correct?
Yeah,
this is where I had Baker. I slid Baker into 17. Again, it's just all about the chemistry with Odell because he can go from
last year was 17.
yeah. So I think he can go from being a 17 ranked quarterback to a top 10 if him and Odell really connect because he's got the weapons, like you said, Kareem Hunt, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, if he still sticks around. Obviously Odell, and then like Rashad Higgins played pretty well. And then who knows, man? The Browns somehow find a way to get money and pay random people for no reason. So it'll be interesting to see who they add.
That's a running team, right? They want to run the ball down your throat.
Yeah.
It just happens every now and then. Baker Mayfield throws a touchdown.
Yeah. He got an 18.
I have the GOAT, man. I have Tom Brady.
That's where you put Tom.
That's where I put Tom Brady, man. I mean, last year he finished as quarterback 8, and I was super impressed with that. I would not have guessed that at all.
Me either.
Fantasy pros have him around 11. I have him lower than anybody of these 19. The best was 10. Lowest was 15. I have him 18. I don't know, man. 44 years old. I said it all when you picked Tom, but I struggle to put him any higher. I mean, he's going to throw a lot of check downs. If they can run the ball efficiently, they're going to want to run the ball efficiently.
Yeah.
And if they can run the ball into the end zone, Tom Brady's going to slap them on the butt and say, great job, and not have an issue with it at all.
Yeah.
I struggle because Tom Brady truly could care less about fantasy football. And I think most of these quarterbacks care a little bit.
At least a little bit.
Tom Brady does not at all. And that's okay. That's probably good. I mean, he's won a lot of Super Bowls for it. He's done the right thing. I struggle. I could never start Tom Brady in fantasy football. I really don't think I could. I really don't.
Yeah, at 18, I went with another aging quarterback in Kirk Cousins. Statistically, he's not bad. 4,265 yards, 35 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. The weapons are there with Thielen, Cook, and Justin Jefferson, and Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph, those kind of guys. But they need another wide receiver, obviously. But I mean, maybe not obviously. Maybe they need a more dominant tight end because they are a more run dominant team. So maybe getting a tight end like a Hunter Henry or somebody like that to throw into the Viking offense. But that's just a team, man, with one of the best running backs we got in football and the quarterback that benefits off the play action bomb like old Baker does. So this is where I put Kirk. His numbers surprised me, kind of how you did with Tom. I kind of looked at Kirk and was like, man, he was a lot better than I thought he was.
He finished quarterback 11.
He did.
And now the issue with players that aren't in this top 8 range here is I feel like guys like Kirk, guys like Tom Brady, and guys like a Matthew Stafford or Ryan Tannehill.
Daniel Jones.
Have a boom game.
Daniel Jones. Right.
They are consistent.
Yeah.
And if that's all you need, awesome. Start it. If you're in a deep league, you'll love it. 2 quarterback league, you'll love it.
Yeah.
If you're in a 10-team standard league, PPR league, it doesn't matter what quarterback. I would rather start one of these flyers between 18 and 24 who are playing one of the worst defenses in the league with a terrible secondary than any of these guys because they are so consistently decent.
Yeah.
That's my issue, my biggest issue with a Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I can see that. And, we are all about, some sort of running ability. He only had 1 rushing touchdown and not very many attempts. I think he had a little over 100 yards. But yeah, Kirk's one of those guys, man. He's got weapons. That's the thing. And he's got one of the best running backs in the league to kind of take the pressure off of him. So that's why I went Kirk. And who you got at 19, brother?
Oh, man. I got Big Ben Roethlisberger, man.
Jesus. Can't believe
I don't like Big Ben one dang bit. But I will say, he finished last year as quarterback 14, and he played 15 games. Now, all these guys will played 16 games. He averaged 19 points a game. He's average again. He has weapons. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I don't think they'll have Juju back, but if they do, Juju. I mean, that offense is
Washington
historically good.
Yeah.
They have been for the past, since they got Big Ben, past 10 years, they've been good. And we have watched them a lot.
I have some questions when it comes to Big Ben, though. That offensive line is getting so much older. And they're banged up. Some of their younger guys that were good, like I'm pretty sure the young guard that they have, his last name might be Banter, Zach Banter, I think. He got banged up. He was out for the whole year pretty much last year. Andrew Villanueva, or on whatever his name is, Alejandro Villanueva. He's aging, and Pouncey just retired. They're getting old, and Ben is old. He can't have a year with a bad O line. He can't. He will retire mid-season if there's a year with a bad O line. And I'm with you. I don't think they signed Juju back. I don't think they have the capital to, because I think they want to sign some of their defensive guys back, and they might go for a guy like J.J. Watt. And so I don't have Big Ben in the rankings.
I'm at 19. I mean, I like him better than some guys. I don't love him. No, heck no.
Yeah.
It's hard not to put him in there, just how long I've seen him. But I agree, the O-line stinks. And that's why I don't think, I might be wrong, but I do not believe I have a Steelers running back in my rankings.
They don't even have really a running back like a RB1 right now. They just have Benny Snell because James Conner's free agent. They have Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland Jr.
Yeah. And I mean, even if I don't see a Steelers running back ending up as a star.
And if they wanted to, they could draft like a Travis Etienne, but then all them other needs that they have just kind of go to the back window for a running back. And
I think running back's the most versatile position in the game. I think Benny Snell paired him along with more of an elusive back.
Like McFarland, which is kind of what they got brewing.
I'm thinking more like 4th, 5th round guys that I don't even know the names. Talented, smaller,
quicker. Yeah. At 19, I went Daniel Jones. That's where I had Danny Dimes. Just again, we're not seeing that big leap from Darius Slayton. We haven't seen that. I love Sterling Shepard. I love Sterling Shepard. Think he can be the real deal, but we haven't seen that leap out of him. Evan Ingram's about as inconsistent as they come. The tight end position is so weak that he's a Pro Bowler somehow. But yeah, I like Daniel Jones, his running ability. He gets Saquon back. Wayne Gallman is a free agent. But I think that they can bring him back on some sort of deal. You hope they don't?
No, I'm a Saquon owner. Give the ball to him every single time.
Oh, 100%. I love Saquon. Don't get me wrong. But, yeah, that's where I put Danny. And to round out your top 20, who's number 20?
Trevor Lawrence. I had to put a rookie in. I think Trevor Lawrence is probably better than top 20. I think he's
that's kind of what we hinted at whenever I had him at 15, is that in 2 months, whenever we do a post-draft, he will probably be a little bit higher. After free agency, after all this goes on, and we have a more defined idea of that Jaguars team, or if he even goes to the Jaguars, a lot can happen. But
a lot.
Yeah. So in that 20, I put Derek Carr. That's where I put Carr. And again, one of those guys I looked at his stats, I was like, man, he didn't have a bad year. Is he a Las Vegas Raider at the beginning of the season? Who knows? But right now he is. Last year he finished 13th, I believe. He had over 4,000 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, had a very good year. But another big thing with Derek Carr, he confuses me, man. Like one game he'll look very, very good, and then the next game he'll look so average it's stupid. And they don't really have a lot of weapons outside of Josh Jacobs, and they're losing Nelson Aguilar to free agency, and maybe they sign him back, maybe they don't. They're losing Zay Jones, who they traded for mid-season, I think, last season. They don't really have number one unless I'm just missing over a guy on my head. But, yeah, Derek Carr doesn't run the football very much. He only has 3 rushing touchdowns, 140 yards. And his consistency is a big problem for me. But, I mean, his yards and his touchdown totals are proof in the pudding, I guess. And
it's hard to like that offense.
Yeah, it really is. It really is difficult.
I mean, I like Josh Jacobs, but I struggle past.
I'm not that high on Jacobs, but.
Do you have any honorable mentions when it comes to quarterbacks? Because I was shocked to not see like Tua.
Drew Lock was one that I was battling too. I like Drew Lock. Tua, maybe. I'm not high on Tua. I think if Winston is the Saints starter, I think he can be a top 20 guy.
I really like whoever the Colts quarterback is.
Yeah, whoever the Colts get is gonna catapult. Carson Wentz, I think he has to get another go, and I think he can be a top 20 guy.
You put Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz gets traded to the Colts, I will put him at number 11.
Really? He goes that high for you?
Yes. I like that Colts offense. I have a great offense.
I would love the fit of Carson Wentz in the Colts. That's like where I want to go.
You give me Desean Watson there, he might be number 2.
Oh, Desean? Oh, yeah.
He might be.
Oh, yeah.
He might be.
Yeah. But, yeah, that kind of wraps up our quarterback rankings. And I think I'm going to break this up into 2 parts. because I think we went a little over like an hour for the quarterback. So I think we're going to stop it here. But then there's going to be a part 2 that'll be posted literally back to back. And we'll have the running back rankings there. So just real quick, Daniel, appreciate the quarterback rankings. And we hope you guys click over to the next one for the running back ratings. We appreciate it.